Not long after Napoleon decided to sell Louisiana to the United States, he declared war on Great Britain in 1803. The war is going to last for about 11 years. It involves all of Europe. Eventually, France captures most of continental Europe, and Britain is going to dominate the seas with especially a naval blockade of the French ports and continent. The idea was it's called the Continental System. They're trying to starve out the French with a lack of trade. The French are actually going to respond by trying to blockade British ports. And the United States is trying to remain neutral, but it's going to remain relatively impossible. By 1805, the war was in a stalemate, and the British in 1806 declared a naval blockade. This would prevent any merchant ships, even the United States ships, from making port in France. They wouldn't be able to get into the port. The United States they wanted to trade with both Britain and France and make money off of this war, but they were being fought against this. British warships in 1806, 1807 started seizing American vessels. This led to Congress to pass a Non-Importation Act, which prevented Americans from importing British goods. In 1807, Napoleon decided to prevent I'm sorry. Yes. In 1807, Napoleon decided to try to blockade British ports. This led to a British blockade of not just continental France, but also the Caribbean islands where France controlled. This meant that the United States was facing a very tough decision. They could either not trade, or they could trade with the British and make the French mad, or they could trade with the French and make the British mad. Or they could try to trade with both and just face the consequences of the blockades. This was the tactic that they decided to work on. In 1807, hundreds of American ships were seized, their cargoes were searched. The sailors on board had to face the additional problem of being impressed, which means captured by the British Navy and forced to work on the naval ships. Between 1803 and 1811, over 6,000 American sailors were going to be forced into serving in the British Navy. This is not only kidnapping, it's also a national insult. In 1807, the Chesapeake incident really brought the nation close to war. The British ship, the HMS Leopard, was off the coast of the United States. And what the British had been doing was stopping American vessels as they were leaving American waters and inspecting the cargo before they even got near a port. In this particular case, a vessel called the Chesapeake was only 8 miles off the coast of Virginia. The Leopard stopped it, tried to come on board to search the ship for English deserters and to impress them, and the captain refused. The Leopard, in return, opened fire on the Chesapeake, killed 3 Americans, wounded 18 others, and then they boarded the Chesapeake anyways and captured 4 men and hung 1 English deserter. This was seen as an act of war, and it was a national insult. And while Jefferson demanded an apology and suggested that state governors start to mobilize the militia, he really didn't do anything more than try to ban British ships from American waters. Now, the reason for this is probably because they didn't have an army that was ready to go. And Jefferson was nervous about getting involved in a war, an international war. But this infuriated his critics and leads to the next move, which is an embargo.